What is going on, Giants fans? Back at it here with another New York Giants video, and it's officially NFL free agency season 2025. It is one of my favorite times of year. You find out which players are going to be joining your team for the 2025 season, coming from other teams, who's going to stay, who's going to go. It is very magical, and it is wild. We've already seen some crazy moves happen at the time of this recording. I wanted to get this out, talk about some of the in-house free agents that the Giants have already re-signed, a couple of guys who might be goners, and some good potential fits for Big Blue with the upcoming season. And before I get into that, folks, if you're new to the channel, make sure to check us out on all of our social media. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at Big Blue Avenue. Sam and I are really excited to be covering the offseason with all of you. So quickly here, free agency officially begins Wednesday, March 12th at 4 p.m. That is when contracts can legally be signed. The tampering period, as in the negotiation period, begins Monday, March 10th at 12 o'clock noon, although you will see some deals break before then. So let's talk about in my opinion, three top free agents for the Giants. And obviously coming off a 3-14 season, guys who have expiring contracts are not likely to be retained. Let's talk about the first one, though. A guy who's been around the block for a while, 6 years strong, Darius Slayton, second longest tenured Giant. A guy who came in with Daniel Jones in the 2019 draft class. Still just 27 years old. Throughout his Giants career, he has 259 catches for nearly 4,000 yards and 21 touchdowns. He started 66 games, playing in 92 of them. This past year in 2024, it was a down year for the whole Giants offense. It was a revolving door at the quarterback position. Slayton only had 39 catches for 573 yards and 2 scores. And, I think the Giants play at the QB position since 2019, since Slayton's rookie year, has realistically declined. And that was the year he had 8 touchdowns. That was a career high for him as a rookie. Unfortunately, it has not been the same case since. I think with Daniel Jones now being off the team, Darius Slayton is unlikely to re-sign with the New York Football Giants. I think he'll sign elsewhere. A couple destinations for him. I think the Atlanta Falcons could use his services. They could use, another receiver to pair with Darnell Mooney and Drake London. I also do think that you look at teams like the Washington Commanders or possibly even the Minnesota Vikings, who are looking for some depth at the receiver spot. Next up, we have Azeez Ojulari. Personally, my favorite of this group. I have loved him since the day we drafted him. I thought the Giants would take him in round 1 back in 2021. I was wrong. They drafted him in the second round. He's the only member left standing of the 2021 draft class, and it's a shame. That was an awful draft class. Azeez was the only somewhat bright spot of it. My guess is Azeez is going to get around a 2 to 3 year contract, somewhere between that $7 to $8 million range. And I don't think it will be coming from the Giants. And here's why. They just invested a lot of money in Brian Burns. They have to pay Kayvon Thibodeau next year, possibly even sooner. And I think you can get depth from other places. And one of the internal guys the Giants re-signed already was Tamon Fox. So I think him coming back, not saying he's the same type of player as Azeez is, he's not, but they're bringing back depth in case they can't get Azeez back, if they get outbid by somebody, or if they just freely decide to let him loose and add to this position in the 2025 draft. 6 sacks in 11 games this year for Ojulari, shortened again due to injury. That's been the theme of his 4-year career with Big Blue. He only played 1 full 17-game season as a rookie in 2021, where he had 8 sacks, a career high, and 49 tackles in 46 career games with Big Blue. He's had 22 sacks. I'm definitely going to miss him if he goes. I predict that he will sign elsewhere as well. Lastly, the one out of these 3 that I think has the best chance of running it back with the Giants is safety Jason Pinnock. Personally, a favorite of Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll's. They brought him in via cutdowns back in 2022 in the fall, early September. He was added to the 53-man roster when he was not retained. Again, spent some time with them up in Buffalo, and he's been on the team ever since for the last 3 seasons. 25-year-old local guy from Windsor, Connecticut. He's really come into his own as a starter over the past 2 seasons. Played 46 games with 37 starts over the last 3 years. Exactly 85 tackles in each of the last 2 seasons. 3 sacks last year, too. Really good blitzing safety. 16 starts in each of the last 2 years as well. I do think with Tyler Nubin on the roster for the Giants, it's going to be tough to justify bringing Pinnock back on a deal that is not team-friendly. So if I had to guess, unfortunately, I do think Pinnock walks as well. But out of these 3, I do think he has the best chance of coming back. If they don't bring Pinnock back, you have to look at Dane Belton sliding in, but I don't think that's the best idea. I think he's better off in those 3 safety sets being a backup, and then you sign somebody in free agency who could better fit Shane Bowen's defense. Again, the defense last year was a major, major problem. Opponents ran up and down the field on them. They weren't great in pass coverage either. So, yeah, those are the top 3 unrestricted free agents. Now, the Giants have re-signed a decent-sized group of players, mostly role players, third-string quarterback, and the only quarterback on the Giants roster right now in Tommy DeVito, a 1-year, $1.03 million deal. That is a minimum salary for a player with his level of experience. There is no guaranteed money in this deal. They also brought back punter Jamie Gillen, who signed a 3-year deal. $4 million of that is guaranteed. Now, this deal can reach up to $10.2 million with incentives with an average of $3 million per season. Still a young player, 27 years old. He's consistently gotten better since joining the Giants. 2022, not the best year for him. Brought him back in 2023, and then they brought him back in 2024 as well. This past season, he had just 2 touchbacks for Big Blue, and over 48% of his punts were down inside the 20-yard line. That is a career best for Jamie Gillen. I'm happy he's back. Long snapper Casey Kreider back on a 1-year deal. Captain last year, one of only 2 that stayed healthy throughout the course of the season. He's been a mainstay at long snapper since the retirement of Zach Diossi. Linebacker Tamon Fox, core special teams player. He was an exclusive rights free agent. That's a standard 1-year minimum deal. He played 28 games over the first 3 seasons for Big Blue, 207 defensive snaps, and 205 special team snaps in 11 games last season. And then finally, Chris Manhertz. Not the biggest fan of bringing him back, but I see why they're doing it. Personally, I would have preferred, and I know this is getting a little crazy, but I wanted to bring Jack Stoll back. I was a big proponent of him making the 53 last year over Chris Manhertz. He did not. He wound up signing on with the Philadelphia Eagles, and he was pretty good in those 12-13 personnel sets for Philadelphia, and I think the Giants whiffed there. But Manhertz, not a bad run blocker himself. He's a primary blocker tight end. Played in all 17 games last year. He stayed healthy, had just 3 receptions for 30 yards and 1 touchdown. 10th year in the NFL, so a good locker room guy, good veteran. If they want to add competition to the blocking tight end room, John Bates from the Washington Commanders is an option. He's had some pretty good games at MetLife Stadium, and the Giants are quite familiar with him. All right, so let's get to the external free agents. And the biggest news of the last couple of weeks now is how true are these Aaron Rodgers rumors? Now, it was reported by Jordan Renan that this is far from a slam dunk. The Giants obviously would love to get Aaron Rodgers after not being able to trade for Matthew Stafford. Rodgers is 41 years old, played the last 2 seasons with the New York Jets. He's looking to get on with a new team. His boy Devontae Adams has already departed for the LA Rams. He was supposed to be a UFA in 2026. He has a bunch of void years on his deal. I'm not so sure how that works. I'm not this salary cap guru that could go in and try to figure out these contracts to a T. But what I do know is that the Giants apparently are not the most desirable destination for Rodgers, which I thought that Rodgers' team reached out to the Giants expressing some interest. But I guess after talking to the Giants, there was not that much interest because I think Rodgers wants to start for another couple of years. Remember, he's 41, but he sat his first 3 years. So I think Rodgers still has, if he wants, 2 or 3 years left in him. If he cannot get that desirable destination, whether it's the Giants or, I don't know, Seattle or LA, right? Just some examples. He might just say, you know what, screw it. I'm going to retire. I'm going to become a coach or just disappear from the NFL entirely. It's possible. But the reason why I think the Giants should really consider Aaron Rodgers after doing, some due diligence on this. Rodgers last year with the Jets played behind a similar offensive line that Daniel Jones did. Jones was a mobile quarterback. Rodgers is not. He's a pocket passer. He's very traditional. He's been beat up throughout his career, injuries, bad offensive line for the Jets. He still threw for over 3,800 yards, 28 touchdowns to just 11 interceptions. For reference, folks, the Giants have not had a quarterback throw more than 15 touchdown passes since Daniel Jones in 2019. That's how long it's been. The Giants need to get a guy that is going to throw touchdown passes, get these receivers involved, don't make the offense one-dimensional, and be a team that is capable of putting up close to 30 points a game or more. Those are the teams that are going to go far in the NFL. And for the Giants, I think you have to get back to respectability. And if you do bring on Aaron Rodgers, I think he has to be accepting of that mentor role for the future quarterback of this team via the draft or in future years. Who knows? So that's the hottest name of the week that is linked to the Giants pre-free agency. The second hottest name is another departing New York Jet, DJ Reed. Giants are linked to him because the Giants desperately need a corner to pair with Deontay Banks. They don't feel comfortable going with just Banks, Flott, and Drew Phillips into next season. I don't think corner is a position the Giants want to address in the draft because of their significant youth at the position. And I think at 28 years old, DJ Reed could be a decent option for the Giants. There's some things I like about Reed, some things I don't like about Reed. 28 years old. He's just 5'9", though, 188 pounds. He can play slot. He can play outside boundary corner. He came into the league, played with the 49ers in 2018 and 2019, then tagged along with the Seattle Seahawks for a couple of years, and then spent the last 3 years with the Jets playing opposite of Sauce Gardner. And this is the closest thing to a cornerback one in this free agency. And what I mean by that is on most teams, DJ Reed could be the number one corner, but since he's playing with Sauce, he's the number two, and he's gotten tested a lot. And I think that's why his stats have been really good over the last couple of years, because teams are forced to target him. This past season, he started 14 games, had 64 tackles, 4 TFLs, 11 passes defended, and no picks. The one concern for the Giants on defense, I think, that has to stand out is their lack of causing turnovers. The Giants were very weak in turnovers caused last year. DJ Reed did not have any interceptions. So that could be a concern if you're looking at that. The Giants need to note that Reed has only picked off 2 passes over the last 3 years. His penalty rate has also been increasing the older that he gets. He's had 19 penalties over the past 2 years, a career high 11 this past season. Now, the good about DJ Reed, I wanted to get the bad out of the way first. Among corners that played at least 300 snaps last season on defense, Reed was number 1 in average separation, which means receivers could not get much separation at all against him, if any. Number 6 in tight window rate, number 7 in forced incompletion rate, number 18 in completion rate allowed. Awesome stats. In my opinion, this is the guy that is most likely going to sign with the New York Giants, although he's not the number 1 corner that I have on my free agent wish list. And I do think if the Giants do sign him, it's going to be around a 4-year, $72 million deal with $40 million guaranteed. Those are the numbers I've crunched up personally with reports that I've read and looking at his play compared to the rest of the cornerback market based off last year's free agency and what we've seen so far. Now, note the Giants have $47.8 million available in cap space, so we'll see how much of a cap hit they'll have in year 1 if they do sign him. So, some additional free agents I want to talk about, players that I think could be good fits for this team outside of those big 2 players that are linked to Big Blue. So, there's 2 positions that I think the Giants are going to heavily invest in free agency. Quarterback is not one of them. It's not a guarantee. I don't think the Giants are going to splurge on a quarterback. I would rather get a veteran that is on a cost-effective deal that can be a solid bridge for a rookie. And I think Aaron Rodgers might be too expensive of a bridge for the Giants. I'd be all for bringing him in, but for the right price. I wouldn't give him more than $25 million a year. And I don't know if he's willing to do that at this point of his career. So, Will Fries, the right guard of the Indianapolis Colts, is a player I have my eyes on. I think guard and corner are the 2 positions the Giants are going to target the most. And everybody's like, oh, well, they signed John Runyon last year. They brought in Jermaine Illuminor. Well, this is true, but the offensive line is still incomplete. Greg Van Roten is an impending free agent. He's 34 years old, turning 35. I don't know if the Giants want to bring him back. They may want to get younger at this position. Joe Schoen has showed his inability in terms of drafting interior offensive linemen. I don't want to trust that route. And I do think regardless of who the quarterback is, you want to give him time in the pocket. You can still draft a rookie on the interior because, Runyon has 2 years left on his deal. John Michael Schmitz has 2 years left on his rookie deal. You don't know what's going to happen to those guys in a couple of years. Illuminor has only 1 year left on his contract. Evan Neal, who is rumored to shift into guard this year, I don't think he should start. He'll probably be a backup guard. Only has 1 year left on his rookie deal, and they will not be picking up his 5th-year option. I think Will Fries is a player who can really shine if the Giants do go get him. Now let's talk about the ties. And I know what everyone's saying, oh, well, we signed Mark Lewinsky 3 years ago in free agency, and look how that worked out. I think this is a little different from Mark Lewinsky, who, by the way, did go back to the Colts this season, which was pretty interesting after Will Fries had a season-ending injury. 7th-round pick at a Penn State in 2021 he was. Unfortunately, as I just mentioned, he was hurt. That ended his season short. He did fracture his fibula after starting only 5 games in 2024. But for a guy who was a 7th-round pick 4 years ago, his career has been quite impressive thus far. Despite the 5-game sample size, he finished as the 4th highest ranked guard on PFF this past season. I don't put too much weight to PFF because I know there are heavy inaccuracies with that site. I did just want to bring that up, though, that he is highly rated in their opinion. He's an excellent run blocker from the film that I've watched. He's pretty good in pass protection as well. He's not average in pass protection. He's good to above average. He's in that range based off of film that I've seen with him over the past 2 seasons. Run blocking, outstanding. He can move people. He's 6'6", he's 305, he's only 26 years old. You're getting 8 years younger if you bring him in to replace Greg Van Roten. So I think that is a interesting factoid there. Fries will likely command around $15 million per year. That is a bit steep for a guard. Remember John Runyon last year? The Giants signed him for $10 million. If they can get Fries for 11 or 12, I think that's a score. Now, unfortunately, due to Joe Schoen's bad drafting at this position, the Giants are forced to overcompensate for it in free agency. This is not a recipe for success, but if I have the same brain as Joe Schoen, I'm spending on another offensive lineman this offseason because that position unit still has to improve. And we saw what happened to the line last year when Andrew Thomas went down. It was an utter disaster. A couple more stats on Fries, though. Started all 17 games in 2023, where he played over 1,100 snaps. He did have 7 penalties, but overall, good work from Fries 2 years ago. Started 9 games in 2022, appeared in 3 games in 2021. So grand total of 27 career starts for a 7th-round draft pick coming off his rookie deal. I think the future is bright for him. I think his ceiling is rising. And again, Staten Island guy, he might want to play for the Giants. We'll see. Next up is a guy I had on my list last year, Dalton Risner. 2019 second-round pick out of Kansas State by the Denver Broncos, spent his rookie contract with them, and he spent the last 2 seasons with the Minnesota Vikings. He was named starting left guard as a rookie in Denver, suffered a partial UCL tear in January 2023. A bit older, he's 29 now, 6'5", 312. That's okay. All for it. Still younger than Greg Van Roten. 10 games and 8 starts for the Vikings last year, 0 penalties. Again, he didn't start all the games, unfortunately, because he had another injury that he had to deal with. This is a riskier signing, in my personal opinion. In 2023, 15 games, 11 starts, no sacks allowed, and 745 offensive snaps. However, he did start all 16 games in his first 2 seasons, and then 15 games in 21 and 22. And through 6 years in the National Football League, just 2 holding penalties. If you want to go cheaper than Will Fries, I think Dalton Risner could be a good idea. He is also better at pass protection and run blocking. He's not bad at run blocking, but he's not as good as Fries in that category. I think he's a step above Fries, though, in pass blocking. So it's what you want to prioritize, right? When the Giants brought in Greg Van Roten late last offseason, I should say, he was a better pass protecting guard than a run blocker, and that showed. That certainly showed, and we'll see what happens there. 2 more guards, and then we'll switch to the next position. Liam Eichenberg, coming off a rookie deal with the Miami Dolphins, 27 years old, 6'6", 306, second-round draft pick out of Notre Dame. He has a lot of versatility. He's relatively been more healthy than the last 2 guys I've just mentioned. 60 career games with 52 starts, primarily at the guard position. He's been all over, though, on the offensive line. This past season, 17 games and 14 starts at right guard. 2023, 16 games, 12 starts, also at right guard. 2022, 10 games started at left guard, and then his rookie year, 17 games with 16 starts at left tackle. He was an awesome left tackle at Notre Dame. His arms were a bit undersized for a tackle, so that's why Miami shifted him into guard. Eichenberg does have a penalty problem, mainly with false starts, though, not so much holding. If you want to get him in on a cheap deal, you can. Not as good as the previous 2 options in terms of play and film, but injury-wise and consistency-wise, he could be a guy that fits in well with the New York Giants. Finally, I think this guy is the absolute fallback option, Evan Brown, guard from the Arizona Cardinals. And this name you may remember, he did start his career with the Giants as an unrestricted free agent in 2018. He's now 28 years old, spent 2 years with Big Blue, got claimed off waivers from the Giants by the Dolphins back in 2019. He's played on 6 total teams now, most previously with the Arizona Cardinals. He did spend 3 years with Detroit as well. So again, he's been all over, a journeyman, you'd call him. 74 career games with 57 starts. 6'2", 320, smaller guard with smaller arms. But we do know one of the best guards in Giants history, Chris Snee, had those little baby alligator arms. So this is not much of a concern for me with Evan Brown if they do elect to bring him in. Last year, he started all 17 games at left guard for Arizona, had a 73.5 passing grade, 14 games, 12 starts at right guard for the Lions in 2022, 16 games, 12 starts at center for the Lions in 2021. And I did forget, in 2023, when he played with Seattle, started 16 games at center. So he has started double-digit games at 3 different positions on the offensive line over the last 4 seasons. So this is an example of a guy, I mentioned he's UFA, right? Bounced around the league for the first 3 to 4 years, struggled to find a home, finally did with Detroit, on and off practice squads for 3 to 4 years, hard work. This is a hardworking blue-collar guy. He's not going to command a lot of money. I think you can get Evan Brown for $4 to $5 million. And personally, if you're Joe Schoen, I'm probably targeting either Dalton Risner or Evan Brown. But I do think that he is going to shoot for the sky and try to go for Will Fries. That's just my personal opinion. Next up, we're going to talk about a couple more quarterbacks. We already spoke about Aaron Rodgers. Realistically, I don't know if Sam Darnold is a possibility for the Giants. I know the Vikings are trying to re-sign him, but I think he's headed for Pittsburgh. I don't think he wants to come back to MetLife Stadium. A couple realistic options for Big Blue, though. I don't know what Atlanta's going to do with Kirk Cousins. I don't even know if he's movable. We know he signed that major 4-year deal with them this past offseason. He's younger than Rodgers. He's 36. Again, he's not young. He's old, but a little bit younger than A-Rod. 6'3", 205. 14 games started this past year. Threw for over 3,500 yards, 18 touchdowns, however, 16 interceptions. He was eventually benched for their first-round draft pick at QB and Michael Penix Jr., and mainly the reason why Cousins was benched is that he did not look good off of his Achilles injury in 2023. Every time he would step flat on his back foot, it would affect his throwing accuracy, and that is a major concern. However, if you want Cousins to start half the season, this is a guy that could potentially do what Kurt Warner did for Eli Manning if you give him the offensive line to do so. And I do think if you want to go for a Kirk Cousins, why not bring in a Dalton Risner who played with him in Minnesota for a year? I mean, it's certainly a possibility. Next up, I think probably the second most likely option for the Giants after Aaron Rodgers is Russell Wilson. He stopped by for a cup of coffee before free agency last year and signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Smaller QB, Super Bowl champion quarterback, 5'11", 206. He's 36 like Cousins. Started 11 games last year after recovering from an early injury he had. He eventually replaced Justin Fields. He helped get the Steelers to the playoffs. I thought that was an awesome fit for Russ, but now that he has another good season under his belt, he might command some more money, and I don't know if that's in the cards for the Pittsburgh Steelers. However, the Steelers did just trade for DK Metcalf, so it's a possibility, a strong possibility, that Russ will re-sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers based off of that news. So I don't know what's going to happen. If they're going for Darnold or Russ, I don't know what they're going to do. But based off of them trading for DK Metcalf, I think it might be tough for the Giants to convince Russ to go to New York over Pittsburgh. That is just my opinion. A couple flyers here late. I have Carson Wentz from the Kansas City Chiefs. I know Patrick Mahomes is back up. He's 32. He has not looked the same since 2021 off of his major injury. The ACL, his knees are kind of shot. More of a quick 4 to 5 week bridge for a rookie, similar with what the Patriots did with Drake May this season, right? Jacoby Brissett started a few games. Nothing special. This is more of a safety option. And finally, you could laugh at this one or you could take it seriously, Jameis Winston. This is a guy who's been a journeyman in his own right, started his career with the Tampa Bay Bucks. When the whole Watson stuff went down this season, Watson got benched and then he got hurt again, whatever. 2-5 as the Browns starter, 13 touchdowns, 12 picks. Not ideal. In 7 starts, though, he did throw for over 2,100 yards. So if you do the math, he was averaging around 300 passing yards per game. Daniel Jones, throughout his Giants career, did not hit that 300-yard passing mark much. So we'll see what happens. We know, of course, he was, part of the media during Super Bowl week. So we'll see if Winston does potentially try to gauge the Giants' interest a little bit and see if the Giants reach out to him. We'll certainly see what happens there. I think this is the least likely option of the bunch that I just mentioned. If I had to rank the quarterbacks right now, Rodgers, Russ, honestly, Joe Flacco is an option too, but I didn't throw him in here. I didn't want to put too many because for length of this video, but there are potential guys you may not think like a Joe Flacco or a Marcus Mariota. But let's get to wide receiver. I have 2 names that I think could pique the Giants' interest. We know Slayton is likely a goner. Jalen Hyatt has failed to develop thus far. Realistically, you have Malik Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson, and that's it. So Joshua Palmer is a name that is pretty interesting. He is 6'1", 210, 25 years old. He played for the Chargers the last 4 years. This past season had 39 catches for 584 yards, just 1 score. He's pretty good with route running. He ranked 17th in separation score this year, 12th in route win rate. And I put him on the list because the Giants have reportedly in quotations, checked in on him prior to free agency beginning. So he is a decent option, I think, as a Z. Next up, the guy that I think the Giants have a strong chance of bringing in if Tennessee does not bring this player back is Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. 27 years old, played for the Titans his first 5 seasons, 17 games with 9 starts. I think Tennessee, having the number 1 overall pick, should look to go in a different direction, not just with quarterback, but with many players on their roster. And I think it should start with, potentially moving on from some guys who have been there for a long time. And a role player like Nick Westbrook-Ikhine might be looking for a new change of scenery. Brian Callahan, first-year head coach. I don't know if he's going to retain him. This past season, though, he did have a career-high 9 touchdown receptions and a career-high in receiving yards with 497, and that is only on 32 receptions. He was a red zone monster for the Tennessee Titans. He also has a connection to Giants tight ends coach Tim Kelly, who used to be the Titans offensive coordinator back in 2023. There's a couple DTs that pique my interest. But I think the Giants should draft a rookie defensive tackle in round 2 or round 3. I'm not a big fan of this defensive tackle class, so I'm going to bypass this position. But if the Giants do elect to go on, a reunion with B.J. Hill is possible, or Deshaun Wharton from the Kansas City Chiefs is a guy they could potentially look into. Corners, I talked about DJ Reed already. I think he is probably destined to be a Giant based off of what's been said, but my pick, a guy that I really like for the Giants, is Christian Fulton, a corner who played last year with the Chargers. He was a 2020 second-round pick by the Tennessee Titans. He's 26, 6 foot, $197. Played last year in LA, had 2 picks, 14 passes defended, both career highs in that category. I think he's getting better as a football player. Really, really excited for him. And, also had a career high in tackles this past season as well, starting 14 games. However, you have to think about, too, he had a career worst in touchdown receptions allowed because he was playing more. He was getting targeted more. But you don't want to weigh too much into that category because the more you play, the more you're targeted. So what did they do? Well, they found ways to get him involved at the line of scrimmage, more active with his hands. The Chargers had him working on, Z's often, slot guys a little bit too. A 66.6 PFF coverage grade. 71.3 in run defense, so that's good. The Giants already have a good run stuff in corner in Drew Phillips, and was 8th best in passer rating allowed this year at the corner position. And I think he is the best fit for the Giants because the Giants utilized cover 3 on nearly 34% of coverage snaps last season. And I think Fulton flourishes in cover 3. And let's not mention that Shane Bowen was his defensive coordinator in Tennessee for 3 years. Finally, Byron Murphy is the last guy I'm going to talk about in this video from the Minnesota Vikings. He's 27, 5'11", $190, 2019 second-round pick by the Cardinals, spent 4 years there, last 2 with Minnesota, flourished under Brian Flores' scheme. He's a Pro Bowler this past year, starting all 17 games. Career high in tackles with 81, picks with 6, passes defended with 14, and also a career high 6 tackles. So a career year for Byron Murphy. What he specializes in is causing turnovers, and that is something the Giants desperately need. He had 4 picks in 2021, 3 in 2023. He can play in the outside, in the slot. He's dealt with some injuries in the past, but he's overcame adversity a lot. 79 career starts in 6 years. That is a guy that could potentially be a factor on this Giants defense. So ultimately, my predictions, 3 guys that I think the Giants are going to look into via free agency. I think the Giants are going to wind up signing DJ Reed, Will Fries, and Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. Not necessarily what I want, but what I think the Giants might do come day 1, day 2 of free agency. So what do you guys think the Giants should do this free agency period? I want to hear your thoughts below in the comments section. Make sure to like this video. Ring the bell for notifications. Please subscribe if you want more awesome New York Football Giants content. And if you want to check us out on all of our other social media platforms, we're also on Instagram and Twitter at Big Blue Avenue as well, in addition to YouTube. So do you agree with some of my free agent predictions? Do you disagree? Let me know what you think below. I'm excited to chat with you. Without further ado, folks, let's go Big Blue.